Good evening and welcome to the election special edition of the Urban Debate. Tonight we focus on the state of West Bengal, a state that is witnessing a change in the political landscape and how. A state that sees the first phase of polling on 27th of March. Very few days left. A state which is literally the hottest election scene right now if you compare it to any other region. The fiercest of the battles are playing out on the streets and the roads of West Bengal. Tonight we're going to talk about few of the aspects that have emerged which are very, very interesting in this round of elections in West Bengal. Perhaps factors that did not play such a big part historically in the state of West Bengal but are now there, very much there, a prominent factor. What we will also try and understand is whether or not they will have an impact on the political fortunes of the parties. Now, for example, let me start with caste politics. Caste politics is not new in our country. It's a very inherent part of the politics that gets played out across the country in many, many states. But even experts will tell you that when it comes to West Bengal, it's never been a very major factor in terms of the outreach, in terms of the promises made, in terms of the candidates chosen. It's never been such a big factor as it is this time around. Then, of course, the other big factor which has been in the last few other state elections as well is communalism. And this time, Mamata Banerjees is also finding out ways to take on the BJP with its majority outreach. Mamata is countering that with her own strategy. So that's the second aspect that we're going to talk about. The third one is actually quite inherent to Bengal politics and a very, very big part of it. And then unfortunately, that's violence. Violence has always been a big part of the campaign season, election season, even on the day of voting and counting. And this time, it's no different. Perhaps some of the experts would tell you that in the older days, it was far worse than what we have seen so far in West Bengal. So caste, communalism and crime or violence, that's what we're going to be talking about this evening. Let me first up say good evening to the panelists who are joining us right now. Snigdhendu Bhattacharya, journalist and author of Mission Bengal, joins us this evening. Nilanjan Udwin, senior journalist and author, also with us this evening. Dr. Nikhil Prasun, spokesperson for the BJP West Bengal. Suparna Moitra, spokesperson of the TMC, and Rohan Moitra, general secretary of the West Bengal PCC, spokesperson for the Congress party as well. Good evening to everybody for being with me on this conversation. Let's start off with part A, which is the caste angle. For example, Mr. Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, if you look at the TMC's caste push, they've organized conventions which were only for SC and ST categories. In many of the chief minister's speech, there have been references to various backward castes and what they're promising to do. The TMC has promised OBC status to several more of these castes now, from Mahishyas to Telis and Tamils. The state, in fact, recently set up a Dalit Sahitya Academy, gave a special 5 crore grant to them. So, how do you read this kind of a focus? And of course, it's not just the TMC, it's all the BJP reaching out to similar castes and categories with similar promises.
I think we'll have to see that this 2021 election is an election which is in transition, in the sense that Bengal finally seems to be moving out from what it used to be, where the primary identity was the political party, the affiliation of an individual to a political party, to the social identity being the primary basis of social identity in the state. We used to say that Bengal society was a party society, like it was divided on the lines of party, but no longer now. This is something which has not happened overnight. Of course, these divisions have always been there, like in every state of the country. Caste identity, also religion-based identities have been important, but they have really never come into the fore. It's only in the last 1 decade that Bengal seems to have come, to the state And to a great extent, Mamata Banerjee is responsible for the personalization and the individualization of caste. So you not only had a breakdown of the polity, but even a breakdown in terms of social identities.
Yes, and like you very rightly said, Mr. Mukhopadhyay, it's not obviously an overnight, phenomena that we're looking at. It's gradually built up in the last few years. And why is that? Snigdhelu, do you want to weigh in on this? Why are we seeing this kind of a shift in Bengal politics?
This caste politics or identity politics, if we take it overall, identity politics is barely 12 to 13 years old in this state. It started with Mamata Banerjee around 2008, 9, 10, started to address communities specifically, Muslims, to Dalits, to Matuas, to Namasudras, and even after coming to power, she had started addressing different communities separately. In the Darjeeling Hills, when she was trying to carve the movement of the Gorkha people for the Gorkhaland state, she was trying to address all small ethnic groups that together make the Gorkha ethnicity uh, uh, by forming development boards for Lepchas, Bhutias separately. And so this is how the TMC has given birth to identity aspirations or ethnic aspirations of many kinds. And then the BJP also nurtured it. In identity politics, they have their own mastery. First, they tried to uh, uh, show the Hindu identity as above every other identity. And then they too started addressing all these communities, the Rajbansis, the Matuas, the tribal people separately. Now you see it at the last moment, Mamata Banerjee is also taking off the Mahisha community. It's a general caste, but it has a large population. If we go look at the pre-independence caste dynamics of overall, I mean, United Bengal, then the Namasudras were the largest caste in Eastern Bengal, the Rajbansis in North Bengal, and the Mahishos in West Bengal. Now the Namashudras are all in mostly in Western Bengal. They have migrated. They enjoy the scheduled caste status. The Rajbansis of North Bengal, they enjoy the scheduled caste status. They are the largest two scheduled caste groups in India, in West Bengal. But the Mahishos don't enjoy this. They are a general caste. Now she is also trying to address them, this general caste. So overall, in the past 10 years, Bengal has entered a vortex of identity politics with myriad aspirations and trying to express themselves as a community. And so the political parties are responding.
And so the political parties are responding. Okay, fair enough. So on that note then, let's bring in the TMC and ask Mr. Suparno Moitra, what was the need to go down this road? Something that perhaps wasn't very big in Bengal 20 years ago, Mr. Moitra.
Good evening, Ms. Shukla. Now, as I was listening very patiently to this conversation, without getting into words like caste or community, we would say that when we were voted to office for the first time in 2011, the article of faith for our government has been inclusivity. That's been an article of faith for us. So in order to do so, which we reaffirmed in 2016 and for the third time in the manifesto when we go to the people for the third time, we wanted to ensure the socially and economically backward, the marginalized, the women folk, they are all brought into mainstream. And there are also aspirations from various sorts of people who have been left behind in the race of development. And I have no embarrassment or shame in admitting that no political party can exist if they don't understand the need of the people. The needs of the people get reflected through the policies, the programs, and of a political party. So how can a political party be completely decoupled and divorced from the needs and the aspirations of people, Ms. Shukla?
Okay, you say it's more about inclusivity and pulling together all of these communities, but you obviously
Yes.
are choosing not to name them right now. But in your political campaigns, in your promises, in your actions, you do. You specifically do name specific communities and what you're offering them. So does the BJP. The BJP has also said that the Maheshas and Telis have been deprived of the OBC status, and we're going to give them that. That we'll form a committee as per the Mandal Commission's recommendations. We'll take steps for their inclusion. So it's obviously something now that even TMC's rivals this time around, the contenders, are bringing in. And the outreach of the BJP for the Matua community is for everybody to see. The community that forms a significant vote share chunk. In the past, their leaders have backed Mamata Banerjee in general elections and state elections. But this time around, it will be interesting to see if BJP's outreach really works in taking away some of those votes. So let me ask this question to Dr. Nikhil Prasun then. Why is it so important to play along these caste lines?
Well, good evening. Actually, when we study the government, the successive governments that ruled West Bengal since independence, it would become clear to us, especially when we analyze the performance of erstwhile left-front government and later on the present-day government. It comes to our mind that a sizable proportion of the society, they were left to lurch on the path of development. They were never encouraged to come to the mainstream. I would give you an example. For example, the Nam Shudras who had to migrate all the way from Bangladesh, they were discriminated against. And the left-front government has to take the blame for the infamous killings at Marid Jhapi of the Hindu community Nam Shudras who were massacred. So left-front cannot absolve itself from the responsibility of that particular massacre. And after that, since this government took over, initially to start with, as the identity politics got its new avatar in the form of Mamata Banerjee. So again, these sections who were at the marginalized portion so far as the development is concerned, they were again in the process of coming to the mainstream by extending their support to a nationalist party called BJP. Now that was manifested in the last Lok Sabha elections and also in the Panchayat polls. Now, as BJP believes in incorporating each and every section of the society in the path of development, now they got intimidated. Later on, what our chief minister did in 2019, for the first time, a large SC/ST convention, of all the MLAs were held. And later on, she started allocating funds for SC/ST, and that was a half-baked approach. And that boomeranged in the subsequent Lok Sabha elections, and we got a sizable proportion of the support from SC and ST communities. Now, for example, in CAA also, actually, in Bengal, CAA is also an extension of our Dalit Welfare Initiative, which was, stubbornly objected to by Mamata Banerjee government. So, because of all these things, these communities are disenchanted with this government, and they have solidly, manifested their support to BJP. Now, with these efforts and with a historical perspective, these communities are solidly coming behind us, and that is going to get reflected on 2nd of May. So that remains the case, that we have been the champions of, social equity, and these people who were not included in the list of the Mandal Commission beneficiaries, now we are bound to include them. Now, this Mamata Banerjee government, through its manifesto, which happens to be incidentally an admission of her failure, is now trying to toe our line.
So I am confused. Is TMC towing your line? Or did TMC start it off by setting up these conventions for SC/STs and academies, and now you are reacting to it? Which one is it?
Well, our politics since day one has been of inclusive development. Therefore, we resorted to, include each and every section of the society, including since we assumed power in the center in 2014. Now we are, and CAA was also in a way an extension to the same. Now, Trinamool Congress got intimidated with the successes that we started, receiving, especially from the Panchayat polls and also after the Lok Sabha poll. And they started reacting to our overtures, which has been an integral part of our policy to start with. So they are reactive in their nature, but they are very
I have
late.
to go to Rohan,
And this is the
but
patch
before
of
that, I have to go to Rohan, but before that, Mr. Suparna wants to respond. Quick response from him and then to the Congress.
I will take 1 second, Ms. Shukla. By our good friend, Dr. Prasun, I don't know whether it was a faux pas or a slip of tongue on his side, because when he mentioned that BJP is a nationalist party, I have no doubt about that being a national party. But having a patent of being a nationalist does not exactly remain with them. The others also have the privilege of enjoying that patent, madam.
Oh yes, absolutely. Now, more and more parties are realizing that it's better to get on to the field where BJP plays, whether it's nationalism, whether it's the majority card, and then challenge them and try and beat them. From TMC to the Aam Aadmi Party, they're doing this. Okay, Rohan's heard everybody out. Let's quickly get a response from him as well. Yes.
First of all, let's congratulate everyone for being nationalist out here. We, the Congress Party, are the biggest people behind this India being a nationalistic movement. Okay, getting back to the point. First of all, let me welcome what JP Nadda had said a couple of days back, where he had tried to include a few of these, the Hindu backward caste which had been left out. My leader of the Purulia, Bagmundi, Mr. Nepal Mahato, has been going on about it for the longest time. He belongs to the Kurmi community, which is part of the Hindus who have been left. They're the Mahatos, and nothing has been done for them. My question to the Trinamool and to the BJP: they are the incumbent powers today. They are in power. I want to know, for the last 10 years, what has the Trinamool done for these communities? Nothing. And as for the BJP, they have tremendous success in Purulia, Bakura, Jongol Mohol. They've had MPs who have been elected from there. For the last 2 years, what have they done for them? They have done absolutely nothing. That's why Amit Shah's rallies in Jungle Mahal have been a complete flop show. He had to cancel those rallies. Coming back to development issues, when you're talking about inclusiveness, you're talking about development for the people who have been left behind. I want to know what is this development they want to talk about. Because we have seen, like, if they're going to give reservations in government jobs, the number of government jobs have gone down. The BJP has been selling off their government properties to the private sector. So where are they going to bring this development in? If you're going to include the people who have been left behind in jobs, what has happened? For the last 7 years, 8 years, the BJP has been in power. We have seen the number of jobs which they have promised in the past and what the actual results are. So this is just pure arithmetic politics. It's just pure vote bank politics which is going on. The only parties which are talking about development is the Congress, Left Front, and the ISF alliance. That's why you see we have brought in a lot of young faces who don't have the baggage. They want to work for the people. They don't have anything to lose. They are there to work for the poor. They're there to work for the young, and they're there to work for everyone across the board. That is what we are pitching.
Okay. I just want to go across to Mr. Mukhopadhyay again. Mr. Mukhopadhyay, in several of the other states, this kind of politics does work, does yield results, be it in Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, or even down south. Is this a ploy that will also now begin to yield results in West Bengal?
Before going to that, there is something which I just wanted to respond very quickly. There is this increasing tendency, not just of the BJP spokesperson in this particular program, but generally of the BJP projecting itself as the upholder of reservation and going out and reaching to those communities which have been denied the benefits of the reservation policy by other political parties. Now, let me say, reservation is a historically evolving policy for every political party. If we are sitting in 2021, let me just remind you that, we normally understand reservation as a post-Mandal phenomenon, but the entire process had started much before that with the appointment of the Mandal Commission during the Janata Party period. in 40 years ago, in 1981, the Gujarat government, it was then a Congress government, Madhav Singh Solanki was the chief minister. He announced to increase the reservation for the other backward castes, by a spectacular level. It was increased, and there was widespread opposition from the upper caste. Now, it would be good to serve a reminder that the political party which was at the forefront of the agitation against the reservation policy at that time was the BJP, which had just been formed, and the RSS. And among the people who were leading the agitation against the reservation was no one else but the Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, who then was a very important sub-regional RSS functionary, and Mr. Amit Shah also had by the time started coming into student politics. But I'm not saying that they're not permitted to evolve themselves, but that doesn't mean that while their politics has evolved, it's fair to run down the parties of others and say that they have no right to evolve their politics and their policies on reservations. Only we have the particular right. Yes, Bengal is definitely moving towards a situation where identity politics is going to play an important role. What impact it will have on the national Bengali identity, which has been very strong, especially as somebody sitting outside Bengali has always been aware of the span Bengali identity, how this is going to get affected, whether this will be fragmented or not, whether this will have a negative impact on the entire image of the community is something which we have to see.
Yes, it is something that we will, which will be very interesting to see play out in Bengal and the, pan Bengali identity in other parts of our country as well. But Snigdhendu, what's your view? Will this yield results? And if yes, is there a party that has an advantage this time around?
See, there are two sorts of principal polarizations. One is Hindu polarization, which the Hindu nationalists are trying to engineer in favor of the BJP, and the other is a Bengali nativist polarization, or we may call it Bengali ethno-linguistic polarization. So this is not just about Trinamool Congress. There are other fringe Hindu Bengali nationalist organizations which have grown over the past 3 years. They are also campaigning on the same line, and we can see a certain revival of Bengali nativist sentiment. But to my understanding, that has this Bengali nativist stance or revival of this sentiment has still been mostly confined to urban areas. Whereas this Hindu polarization seems to have taken more ground in the rural belt. It appears like that. And definitely these kinds of polarizations are going to have an impact in these elections. Even though I see that the principal basis of these elections will be whether people want Mamata Banerjee government to stay or go, whether they are happy with the past 10 years work and want to give her another chance, or they are too livid with corruption and high-handedness and the audacity of the grassroots level, panchayat, municipal level, TMC leaders. So though this corruption versus this malpractice or misgovernance versus good governance battle will be the key dominating factor, while these other factors, this identity politics, they might ultimately play the decider role.
In fact, you raised the other second aspect that I was going to come to, which is, apart from caste, the second C is communalism, and the Hindu versus non-Hindu votes and the strategies that are playing out now. Obviously, BJP stand there is very clear. That the majority and the majority's interests and their views must also be kept in mind, that appeasement of any minority doesn't work. Now, it becomes extremely important in this case because this is a state that, as per the last census, has the highest Muslim population as well. 27% of the population in West Bengal are Muslims. But while in the past, parties like TMC and even the Congress may have simply focused on appeasing that community. This time around, there is a clear shift even in the TMC's policy, even in TMC's strategy, be it the temple visits done by Mamata Banerjee, the parts carried out by Mamata Banerjee, or even the choice of candidates and the number of Muslim candidates that have been fielded by the TMC in this case. So that's going to be our second one. Mr. Nilanjan, you wanted to add to the earlier point that Snigdhendu was making?
Yeah, in fact, I find, it might sound very ironical, but I think the emergence of caste-based identity and the way Bengali society is getting fragmented on terms of, caste identity would be detrimental to the BJP's efforts to build an all-round Hindu identity on the Ram temple or on basic Hindutva issues. You cannot try to unite Hindus on the basis, across castes, forgetting the divisions within, and then also hope to similarly benefit by making promises, electoral promises to different caste groups. So there is a basic contradiction, and I think, that this is going to be negatively impacting the BJP.
Okay, very interesting viewpoint as well on how this may play out for the BJP, especially in West Bengal. Dr. Nikhil Prasun, your response.
Actually, as I mentioned, that this is the consequence of subsequent negligence on the part of the ruling governments, so far as the the marginalized sections of the society is concerned. Now, according to one of the sources, the former Chief Minister of West Bengal, Jyoti Basu, when asked about the implementation of Mandal Commission recommendation, he told that there are only two castes in West Bengal. One is that of rich and another is that of poor. So therefore, they kept on evading this particular question. And the marginalized sections of the society, they kept on suffering like anything. So these people, they would, make so much hue and cry for the implementation of Mandal Commission recommendation in the Hindi heartland. And their attitude in West Bengal was completely contrarian to what they say elsewhere. Now, what happened that these sections, they started becoming migrant laborers. They started working elsewhere. They had to migrate to other parts of the country for their subsistence, and they remain marginalized throughout. Now, when BJP came to the scene, what BJP did was in accordance with its own policy. Now, that is not in contradistinction to the larger linguistic identity of Bengal, or for that matter, Bengali pride. That is supplementary to that. Now, any ethno-linguistic identity of West Bengal cannot be established. It cannot be uplifted. It cannot be catapulted to such a big status unless each and every Bengali-speaking person get its share of pride, gets its share of development, gets its share of mainstream. So that is supplementary to what what we are trying to do.
So let's talk about while this is what you are trying to do, let's talk about the second change that we are seeing again in Bengal political setup, where political parties are not just now reaching out to the minorities but also to the majority. And it's not just your party, it's also the TMC that is doing the same.
Well, actually, the policy of appeasement, the appeasement became the central policy of a TMC government. Now, for example, the imams were given bhattas, and after that it was obstructed to quashed by the High Court, and later on they started giving it indirectly through Waqf Board. And, the way 150 to 200 and 250 petitions are usually filed at the time of Durga Puja for the observance of Visarjan and all that, the way Saraswati Puja was stalled, the way Ram Navami processions are, not given, due permissions. So this led to a feeling in larger Hindu hearts that this government is hell-bent to appease, another section of the society. So that led to, an emergence of another kind of fundamentalism. So that had its effect on the society at large, even in the rural belts. So now they are saying that Hindu polarization is taking place in the rural belt. That is something which was always there, that BJP is trying to reassert that not even a single section, the Hindus should not be discriminated against simply because they belong to the majority sections. And each and every caste, each and every class of Hindu society, it must be paid its own due.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. But don't forget now that from your previous victories and state performances, I think Mamata Banerjee has been very quick to study that and to re-strategize for herself. Just like what the Aam Aadmi Party did in the national capital and successfully did it, they have also started to reach out to the majority community. They've also started to make temple visits, show their own inherent Hindu beliefs. Similarly, what AAP did then, the TMC seems to be doing now, Mr. Suparna Moitra, isn't it? Are you now realizing that perhaps you went overboard with your appeasement politics in the last few years?
Ms. Shukla, you have every right to each word that you choose to ask me a question. I would say that I heard the BJP spokesperson. I also heard young Rohan. And on a personal note, let me congratulate Rohan for getting into active politics because his father has been a great leader. So I welcome Rohan to the political fray. Now to get back to answering your specific question. Dr. Prasun, who mentioned that the majority community has been ignored. I think that was in essence what he mentioned. Let me tell you, and the appeasement which they very loosely mention, cannot be substantiated. Because the policies and the programs undertaken by our government for women empowerment, like the Konna Shri, the Rupo Shri, the Shobut Shati, all have won critical acclaim from the United Nations, and it is not specifically a scheme for a particular community. It was for the girl child, so that the girls can continue their education till the graduation level, and if the girls are from poor families and the fathers can also get them married, so an amount of 25,000 is also paid to them for that. So there is no discrimination as to the religious background that one comes from. One. Two.
Okay.
Then when you are showing the scholarships were given to a specific minority community, it's not. It has been given to everyone, and I will tell you because I think Rohan would allow me to address him as Rohan because Rohan.
FIRs are not usually expected from Hindus. It has been alleged.
Dr. Prasun, now it's my turn, sir. Please allow me to answer. Thank you. Okay. So Rohan had also asked about a record with regard to the development that we possibly have done for the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and the others. Now, let me tell you, we issue 9 lakh SC/ST certificates every year, number one. Number two, approximately 33,000 plus Kendulit workers have, the workers have also been brought under the Social Security scheme. Third, people from the SC and ST community who is above the age of 60 have also been paid a monthly pension of 1,000 rupees, which costs the exchequer approximately 3,000 crores. We also have an accommodation program for them, which is called the Char Sundari program that we have done. And in December 2020, we also issued 20,000 land rights or pattas, as you call, to the Matwas to ensure their rights. Now that's one. Now coming to your specific question as to whether if we have been away from church but near to God, but now whether we have started going to the church, the temple, that was your specific question. Now, you would appreciate, Ms. Shukla, Didi or Mamata Banerjee is fighting or contesting from the Nondigram seat. After she filed her nomination on that day, she paid a visit to all the religious places, and to Mandis 15 in number because they were there, because there were places of which of course she wanted to visit, and she also went to a mazar because this is all on public domain. So
Correct.
it's not about that she was visiting only a temple and she was not that. She's been doing that. In Calcutta, when she's there, she's familiar in going to a mandir. She goes to all the mandirs. She goes to a mosque. She goes to the Christmas programs as well. She does it. And last, that whether she was forced to do a Chandipat from the political platform is you'll have to see the context, Ms. Shukla, because the only calling card for the Bharatiya Janata Party is the Hindu card. Right. So Didi said that let us fight on development, on growth and jobs. Let us fight.
But
that.
then Didi decided to start chanting parts as well. So Didi decided to let's take on the BJP on their turf. If this is their biggest attraction point for votes, let's challenge them on that. That's what's happening, Mr. Suparna Moitra. You may want to not admit it, and those are your political compulsions, as it is for Dr. Prasun to say no, we're all about Vikas and we're all about development and not any other kind of politics. But that's what it is. So let me take it across to Snigdhendu. One more time, Signedu, because you raise the whole communalization aspect as well. Now, how is this going to work out for the TMC, a party that clearly a few years ago went all out trying to appease the Muslim community, but now trying to challenge BJP on its turf?
See, let us not live in denial. BJP has forced a good number of India's political parties to take up majority appeasement. We can see that in Delhi, we can see that in West Bengal. Mamata Banerjees, yes, she did visit a mazar in Nandigram, but if you look at her entire schedule of 2 days, she visited 19 temples and 1 mazar. And if we look at the ratio of their Muslim candidates, they feel, see, Muslims make more than 1/4 of the state's population. Now, in the 2016 elections, the TMC had fielded 18% of its total nominees from the Muslims. There were 53 Muslim candidates. And of them 35 won. This time TMC has fielded 35 candidates. So there is no denying the number of Muslim candidates, Muslim MLAs from the TMC is going to decline. And the party has, TMC and every other leader of the party have been trying hard over the past 1 year or so to get rid of the tag of Muslim appeaser.
Yes.
Or minority appeaser.
Except the ones who perhaps went and aligned, and joined hands with controversial fundamentalist image parties. I don't know what strategy they are playing, Rohan.
Well, first of all, this, I want to congratulate Mr. Suparna Moitra for, saying what he said about the achievements. And then going back, if you have such amazing achievements, why are you going for appeasement politics? Why can't we just talk about development? And then coming back to your question, ma'am, the ISF, for your information, has a tribal leader who's the president of the ISF. It might have a star campaigner in the name of Mr. Siddiqui, who comes from the Furfura Sharif. But a good orator does not have to mean that he's into communal politics. We have decided our alliance after thinking a lot of things. We had a very amazing brigade rally, which came much before Narendra Modi came to Bengal. We did the rally without the amount of finances the BJP had. They spent 60 lakhs to bring in 3 trains from the various districts outside of Calcutta. We don't have that kind of capacity. We don't have that kind of finances. But you all saw it. The whole of India saw it. What kind of traction we got out of our brigade. So to say that Abbas is a very fundamental person, I would reject it. Because if he's a fundamentalistic...
I'm not even talking about one individual, but it's the image that the party carries. It's the same to say, look at the star campaigners, and Congress party will often quote this to me. The star campaigners of the BJP will be Tejasvi Surya and Yogi Adityanath. Yogi Adityanath is sent even to Kerala to campaign for the party for a reason. And that's why they are star campaigners.
If it's working in this modern India, which we've got after 2014, we have every right to have a star campaigner who appeals to the voters and gets us the votes. That is what we are talking about. Because that is what we're talking about. Because everyone else here is talking about appeasement. And you know, we have been blamed forever in the UPA 1 and the UPA 2 that we are the party which was appeasing certain communities.
The pioneers of it.
No. But the Congress doesn't have any vote bank. We are appealing to the people all across the country in terms of development. We have a leader in Rahul Gandhi who's not talking about caste, who's not talking about religion. He's talking about jobs. He's talking about better tomorrows. He's talking about security of women. He's talking about women wearing, any kind of jeans they want, any kind of skirts they want. Women doing, push-ups, everything. So let's talk about real things.
All right. I know Suparna Moitra wants to respond, but Mr. Mukhopadhyay wanted to make a point. Yes, first to you.
Please.
You know, if you look at legislative data,
yes,
nowhere in India, right from the first election, would you find that the number of Muslim legislators, either in the states or in parliament, have, in any way matched the total Muslim population in the state or across the country. Muslims have been invisible in politics by and large, and this is something which has been there in every state. Even in West Bengal, unfortunately, it was there, even after 1977 when the left front came to power. What has happened in Mamata Banerjees' tenure is that there has been a certain visibilization of the Muslim, and that has been given very slowly, brick by brick, through what we all say, the WhatsApp university, that Mamata Banerjee is a great appeaser of Muslims, that she's going out, doling everything to the Muslims, taking it out from the Hindu plate. That is far from the truth. The point is that if giving representative, if being more sensitive towards India's largest religious minority is a crime, so let it be a crime. The point is that it should not be repeatedly called an appeasement, but yes, this is something which needs to be done because in contrast, what the BJP has done, they have completely visibilized and marginalized the Muslim voter. So there must be a counter to it. And I think, Mamata Banerjee is doing it. It has also been done to a little extent by other political parties in other states.
But Mr. Mukhopadhyay, there is merit to what is also being said here, that even Mamata Banerjee has now reduced the number of Muslim candidates that she's fielded. And, it's been a very carefully done study in constituencies where if you see vote share of the last two rounds of elections, where BJP may be gaining an edge, she's changed her strategy. She's also gone ahead with non-Muslim candidates. And so there seems to be a stark difference there.
Of course, there is no denying, that the BJP politics has had an effect on even Mamata Banerjee's decisions. And, if she has taken a decision because of the pressure of the BJP, just because that she's done it does not mean that it is a good development which should be welcomed by people all around.
No, not at all. Absolutely not.
I see.
I mean, all political parties moving to a trend of majority appeasement. Is it a good trend? I agree with you. Yes.
I do not think it is a crime to give adequate representation to religious minorities in this country. If the majority does not take care of the minority, who else would? That's a simple question.
Okay, let me ask.
Are we not interested in having social peace in the country?
Let me ask that question to Suparna Moitra.
Ms. Shukla, let me first pay my deepest respects to Sri Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, whose books I've read, and I read his columns as well. And he's been extremely sensible and has been very liberal when he mentioned this one. Let me tell you, because Sri Bhattacharya was also talking about percentages. Now we have looked at the people with a clean record, one, And second, we have also increased the number of women nominees this time, if you see from our team, because Trinamool Congress has always been the champion with regard to sending the maximum number of women to the parliament, to the state legislature, as well as to the three-tier form of government. Now, the last but not the least, I would like to respond to my younger brother Rohan. I would have been very happy, and I think I will have to side with Dr. Prasun this time, because Rohan's party has always and his friends, they have been always charging both Dr. Prasun and poor Suparno Moitra as being the advocates of competitive communalism. Unfortunately, this time the Congress and the left had the stickiness quotient between two parties had to be cemented by a so-called, if I may use a force which is slightly bordering on the lines of fundamentalist, I would say that.
Okay, but I must point out, Mr. Suparna Moitra, that the amount of mutual admiration you and Rohan have shown for each other, your parties haven't shown in this election season, surprisingly. But I'm very glad that the political representatives on tonight's panel have been, polite and courteous to each other, and I hope we have lots more of these conversations and discussions, political ones, in similar civil manner. But let's get to the third aspect, which is not so civil, which is the violence that comes along in every round of elections, in every kind of politics when it comes to West Bengal. And Mr. Mukhopadhyay, I will start off this one with you. If I had to ask you, has the violence been worse or perhaps lesser intense in the previous times than what we are seeing this time?
Very difficult to say, because what used to happen earlier, we really don't have a clear idea, because we did not have 24-hour village by village coverage the way we have now. It's now everything appears much more stark now, whereas it might have happened earlier in the past also. And I do not think that the past data can be taken as anything very authentic. There would have been a certain amount of suppression of data earlier.
Yes.
The only thing which we can repeatedly say is that, violence of any kind during any election and every election is something that we should do away with. And Election Commission figures does tell out that violence is on the way out in Indian politics and elections as a general norm. Whether it happens in Bengal or not has to be seen, but let's be hopeful about it.
Let's be hopeful about it, absolutely. Snigdhendu, do you think that this time things are better or worse than what we saw in left's era, when left and the TMC would clash?
Yes, I will comment on that. Before that, I will just like to make two comments on the previous discussion. One, I would like to point out that in the recent times, Rahul Gandhi has cited himself as a Brahmin, and Mamata Banerjee has also cited herself as a Brahmin. So these politicians are somewhere feeling the need to claim their upper caste Hindu identity. And two, Muslims in West Bengal have remained electorally underrepresented. In 2016, we saw 59 Muslim MLAs in a 294 assembly. That means 1/5 of the MLAs, whereas they made 1/4 of the population. Now, let us come to, and this time it's going to reduce. So they will have less than 1/5 of MLAs for sure. Now, coming to political violence. This is one of the most crucial aspects in this year's election, because in 2019, the setback that TMC received was in a large sense due to the political violence during the 2018 Panchayat election. TMC has realized this. So it seems like this time they are on the back foot. They don't want to indulge in political terror or violence in the way they did in 2018 or even before that in some municipal polls. But violence has been part of West Bengal's politics for more than 6-7 decades. Since the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, there have been political clashes and political killings. But what TMC did during the 2018 Panchayat elections and some municipal elections the same year, that was kind of unprecedented. The way the panchayat elections, the way they publicly declared their aim to make panchayats opposition free, and didn't allow people to submit nominations, and those who submitted nominations were forced to withdraw their candidature. And even when he managed not to withdraw the candidature, the candidate was not allowed to have his or her polling agent in the booth. So that was unprecedented, and people were really angry with TMC over that kind of political terror.
Yes, no, so
Uh,
Snigdhendu, I completely agree with you. And the visuals that emerged, the reporting that happened of those incidences, of course, were terrifying and horrifying. What we saw unfold, during those municipal polls in 2018. But I would also agree with what Mr. Nilanjan is saying, that we don't know if it was like this earlier, better or worse, because the levels of information coming out, access to information, to visuals, was not as much as it is today. But Suparna Moitra,
Yes.
that is definitely a charge and a label that the TMC will have to carry with it for a long, long time. What happened in 2018 was indeed shameful, and your party must also take responsibility for it.
I think, as you're saying, 2002, 2018 are years best forgotten.
Political violence is a completely different thing, Mr. Moitra. If we had to go on to other instances and other riot-like situations, that would be different. We're talking about election-related violence, the kind that happened in 2018, and not just violence. The way it was attempted to intimidate candidates, the way it was attempted to even destroy the poll booths and target the ballot boxes. That is what is concerning. For every other time, the TMC stands and tries to take the higher moral ground of saying, well, poll rigging is what BJP indulges into. 2018 would be the answer to you.
Ms. Shukla, I didn't want to come and cover up here for anything. And I would express the same honesty on the part of all political parties, because we have seen in Tripura also that 97 to 98% we have seen what has happened in Tripura. In Bengal, there have been exaggerations, and it is a chapter which should have been better forgotten. And no such recurrences of that type. And I would not like to say who was responsible for that. But if we were in government, we will have to take responsibility for that, and we can't be moving out of that.
Okay,
right?
response, quick response.
As I'm coming out and taking...
Like the state, yeah.
Yes,
Actually,
quick response from BJP.
While elections happen to be a festival of democracy, this election is an election for the reestablishment of democracy. All norms of democratic traditions have been put to shreds by this government, by the behavior of this government, and there are issues in paras, in kasbas, in small towns, and where the people are the hegemony of the local goons of TMC is something which has become a folklore. Now TMC is responsible for the division and stratification of the society beyond repair. Now our job is to reestablish democracy. Our job is to reunify our society, because we have been at the receiving end of Trinamool cadres' wrath, as 140 of our cadres were killed and many of them were lynched on the trees. Now they have been whining all through while that almost 1 lakh of their cadres were put to death by the CPM Harmads. Now, what have they done with us? So the Parivartan, which was enunciated in 2000.
Okay. And I just want to point this out, Nikhil Prasun, you may not have realized, but all the time that you and Suparna Moitra were talking about this, Rohan had this big smile on his face and he was shaking his head about what answers were being given by these two political parties. But I will leave it to you all to try and interpret what it was. Rohan, I am very out of time, so I will have to leave it at this. Okay, 30 seconds. 30 seconds, Rohan Mitra.
Just my point is, first of all, I just want to tell Mr. Bhattacharya that, Rahul Gandhi was told as a Christian, that's why he had to put out his identity, one. And the second point was, the BJP is complaining about the violence of the TMC. But all the people they used to have complaints about have been given tickets by the BJP.
Yeah.
So what is the alternative the BJP going to provide for Bengal?
this
Mr. You saw
Okay, out of time.
This is the
Okay,
big
points made
last point.
This
from
Hello,
all sides, completely
Mala.
out of time. I am going to thank all of our panelists for joining us, and truly, I am glad that we had such a constructive, in-depth conversation, polite conversation with all sides also listening to each other. And it is my promise to you, we're going to try and bring you lots more of such insightful conversations, break down the dynamics of elections as we get into now the peak season of mega elections in 2021. Let me just also remind you that when it comes to caste politics and identity politics, it may not have been a big factor in West Bengal until a few years ago, but it is very much a part of it, and no party can then hold a higher moral ground and say, oh, we don't get involved in this anymore. Similarly, when it comes to violence in West Bengal, it's been a part of the political dynamics for a really long time. One can only hope that the Election Commission and the forces this time are able to ensure that there are peaceful elections. Viewers, it gets very, very difficult, especially in rural parts. In urban areas, it's still fine under the scrutiny of the media and the scrutiny of these forces to ensure that people are able to cast their votes safely. It becomes an extremely big problem in smaller regions, far-flung areas, rural areas, where right from intimidation of voters to threatening of the candidates is a big, big problem. One hopes this time things don't get worse. Completely out of time. Thank you so much for joining us on this conversation.